This is Due by Friday, a weekly challenge podcast with Alex Cox and Merlin Mann. This week's challenge: watch The Hitler Show on Netflix.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello and good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Merlin. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I am all right. Do I sound okay? Oh, that other than that little...
No, you don't.
Oh. Oh.
I don't know if it's anything you can fix. Not right now, anyway. I don't. Well, I mean, how would you like to sound?
Confident and not arrogant, with less of a vocal fry, as long as it doesn't make my voice pitch up when I'm like.
I admire that you know these things. That's really cool. No, honestly, it's very cool. Confident. Yeah. Never give up, never give in.
Yeah.
Remember the
together.
doctor told her that there was a promise.
Oh.
Remember
Wait,
that?
I can't. Well,
I thought you liked Chris Fleming. It's when it's in Day of the Doctor when Clara starts crying, and I say Clara, I don't care, and she starts tearing up. And 13, right? No,
Yes.
12, whatever.
13.
Your guy.
Nope. My guy.
12.
11. Matt
11.
Smith is 11.
Phew. Says what? Like what's going on? Remember? And then they do that wonderful shot. I believe that is one of the 3 documented times that I cry during that episode of television.
By documented, is it in a spreadsheet? Do you have a spreadsheet of times you've cried during television shows? Because that would be
That's a good project.
really interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a good project.
It's interesting. It's an insane question. The answer is no.
No.
Okay, but it gets at something that's actually something I'm thinking about a lot right now. It's not very interesting to talk about on a podcast, but thinking about instead of there's a lot of little bits of my world that you could consider, tech and tech adjacent stuff where I'm trying to think at 2 ends of a problem. Title. I'm trying to think about the oh my gosh, and specifically I'm working on some web stuff. I want to do something different with my web stuff. And on the one hand, I'm thinking about what is it that I think I want? How do I want that to look? How would it be presented? Is it federated? Blah, 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 blah. But the thing that I've realized that I think makes this time different is I'm even more importantly than where does this live and does it have a JSON feed is do I like the options that I have for creating new things? Do you know what I mean? Aren't you more apt to use aren't you more likely to use an app or a service or anything if you, start with the easy one, don't dislike using it?
Yes. And this has sort of led to the dilemma, I think, in a lot of our overlapping friend circles over the past, since nearly 2018 of, okay, all these places are bad. Twitter for a while, at least, despite leadership, you still had an option with RSS. And for a while, Substack was interesting because there was the RSS option and there was no algorithm and no recommendation
as a consumer.
Engines. Yes,
Yeah.
as I don't even want to say as a consumer, as
somebody
a creative
as
person.
somebody who would theoretically enjoy reading what I have to say.
Okay, all right. So not someone who is making something, but someone who just wants to read your wisdom
affect
document.
each other. But I take your point, though. I mean, there used to be a lot more ways that you could play nice with other services, and I think you don't have one does not have to be a terrible cynic to realize that there's been changes in various parts of the ecosystem that make that kind of cooperation used to be kind of feel like table stakes for the ones that I would want to use. And nowadays you can't really count on all that stuff to work together in a similar way, which oddly enough leads me back to the important part of my thing, which is do I like using the app to put it in? For example, I really like Ghost. There's stuff I really like about Ghost. I like the way Ghost looks. I like its markdown formatting if I'm doing it on the web. I'm kind of surprised, bummed out, curious about why you've got these apps that are I've got apps like the Blue Sky app and Ivory, which are fine for like posting 4 photographs or a video with, and in the case of, that works pretty well. And I like that interface because that's a lot of the micro content I want to put out is that kind of stuff. But it's so interesting to me. I have my reckons about this, but Ghost seems like it could be so good for this stuff, but it doesn't have a mobile app.
I have not a good or interesting answer, but probably obvious one in that there are folks who have tried to make this exist. I was almost on a project that was trying to make this exist, but very quickly it becomes, there's both not enough people who use it, and because of the way that Ghost's licensing works, you can't do it. Now that might change with some ActivityPub stuff.
I'm just amazed that the company hasn't made a mobile app, and that's where my reckon comes in. And my reckon is that this is for people who used to be on Substack and they want a Substack that doesn't suck. And so you're kind of meant to do this A, on a computer, and B, with a team. I get the feeling, right?
Oh, so do you want the real answer from like the Ghost guys?
No, I don't. I don't. I'm just trying to give you. Well, I mean, we can if you want. If you have facts, that you'd like to share, I don't want to get in the way of that.
It's not
really about Ghost. It's like that was my first sally, my first fusillade into like trying to explain this. But go ahead.
But this is, it is more about Ghost because a lot of these services were really kind of elevated to not like more of the public, but people who were interested in using Substack and who read Substack and were like, ooh, I'm seeing things that I don't want to read. And also I don't like scrolling and seeing pop-ups. And there are more than enough people who will read Ghost stuff, but it is not yet just point. Like that, like with Pika. It's not
if it
worth
ticks
the time
if the first
effort.
box is, can I get off Substack and get into this new thing and not feel like I'm part of an organization I don't want to be associated with? Like, it seems like it ticks that box to me anyway. But I'm always finding about new ones of these I didn't know about. I think David Ferrier, he talked, he's got someday, not today. Someday somebody needs to talk to me like I'm a 3-year-old and explain why newsletters are a big deal. Not today is not the day, but that's the other part of this that's not currently interesting to me, but is obviously interesting to a lot of other people because Ghost does it. I think Microblog does it. There's all kinds of different ways, but the gating. Here's a funny thing. A funny thing is when there was no such thing as mobile, apart from taking a phone call and playing Snake, I did everything on a Mac, and everything that I want to do right now, up to the point of how easy it is to use on a modern smartphone, I was able to do in 2002 or 3 with movable type. Like, I want to be able to have a sidebar with entries from a different blog. Because what I want, I wasn't far from the first person to do this. I had a bunch of different movable type blogs, and then I would use them together. I want to have stuff like Waxy or Kottke, but I think what Kottke first called remaindered links, which could also serve as a post.
What are remainder links?
Time was when, at least for me, and I feel like the culture in what I would consider the early blog days was you have blog posts. And there were certain things that at least to me, if you wanted to, if you, in my opinion, to be respected as somebody who has a blog, there's certain things that were considered good form. It's usually got a title, maybe not. It's often a link to something. You provide the link. I always would provide the link at the very top of the post, because this is my post is really about something related to this link. Maybe I have something to add to that. Maybe I just want to highlight this, but just to get some of the other this dumb weird culture out of the way. Well, you provide a via link. And I use that word so differently than everybody else. To a lot of people, via means I read this in the New York Times. When I say via, that means via Andy Baio, not the New York Times. It's who I got the link through. Again, another part. This is something that then Six Apart tried to their best to have work, which is trackbacks. where you could see like what other people in the blogosphere were linking to this. But of course, then that became a huge spam problem. But so it's dignified to have a proper blog post that you've checked for grammar and spelling. You've got the link to the original thing. You said who you got it from. But also then getting away from, to me, that very mature culture that all the A-list bloggers understood was you generally wouldn't just post. You could do this on FilePile. You could just post a link to a YouTube video and say, this is good, right? But you wouldn't do that on your blog. You want to provide some context for it. So you have a post. The innovation, believe it or not, was people like Kottke saying, well, over here on my side rail, I've got something I'm calling something like remaindered links. And that's the highlight. Really, that's what Andy mostly posts, right? If you subscribe to Waxy, you're going to see these tweet link things that are just links he put in the side rail, right?
Okay,
With a minimum of context, as opposed to a post. You could think about this also in terms of Daring Fireball. Most of what he posts is the equivalent of mature remaindered links, and you clearly see the full, solid, 5-sided star at the title when it's something that he's like written from scratch as like a real post that shows up on the homepage.
I was going to ask about that because this seems to have come back in a big way from, I guess, what I call them, the like new school bloggers, like Birch Tree and Mac Stories and all those people. But where this has always existed, and when you said that, I was like, oh, it's like Tumblr, because that.
Oh, I love Tumblr. Loved it so much.
It's still, Via still means where you initially got it from.
And that had that built-in ability to show you through quoting where the provenance over time of like how it started and got to here, which I always loved. It wasn't very pretty to look at, but you could very clearly see like the path from who made it to how it got to you.
Yeah, that's just still a huge thing within Tumblr culture.
And a great way to discover like minds. Like whether you're there for Doctor Who or porn or whatever, you start seeing these same names pop up and you go like, oh, this is something I need to look at.
Yeah, that's why Tumblr is still the best place for fandoms. Whenever I'm trying to find a really obscure GIF of something, automatically on Tumblr, easy to find. That's how people still can, like, quote, organically grow an audience. No one's making like a living off of it, but wow, what a test of time that a whole sort of ecosystem became, simply because links are still the most important part, even though most people that I know of, and including surprisingly the youths, they don't use the Tumblr app. They use the website as much as they're like.
MB used to give me so much hassle about how much I hated and refused to use the Tumblr app.
Okay,
the website was so much better back in the day, anyway.
Yes, and I liked her app. It was good, and then.
Well, it's not MB's app, it's Tumblr's app.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah.
The beta of Lickability's app was I know that. I know. You don't need to point it out. That's like saying
I don't want you to get too much self-esteem.
Oh, I know.
It creates problems for me. A lot of other people, if I'm being honest.
I agree.
Yeah, good.
On Colbert, his wife noted that Andy Cohen, who I wouldn't know who he is. He's the like after show host of
he's
the
featured
Housewives.
in a John Mulaney bit, but you wouldn't remember that.
I know the name.
Okay. I'm like Andy Cohen in one of those Real Housewives reunions.
Yes, exactly. That is how I know him. But he referred to, God, I wish I remembered her name, but she only comes on Colbert's show like for the little bits, and apparently she's now known as
his
a
wife?
bossy bottom. Yes. And
they wrote a cookbook together.
Oh God, that's so cute.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, that is a bossy bottom. And
okay.
I don't even want to. I couldn't.
I just want to talk about blogging, but she's a bossy bottom. What does that mean? That means. Okay, never mind. I don't want to know. Okay, I think
the
you know what it
reason I
means.
brought that up is because on Tumblr I found.
That's not an effective voice.
No.
We need to work on that.
That's why I'm a bottom.
Local fry.
Please, I want to hear about blogging.
No. I forget why I even started talking about it, except that it's on my mind.
Because you were thinking, it's been on your mind where you want to put stuff on the web, where people can read it.
Well, yeah, kind of. Yeah. I mean, but the two parts that I'm trying until I get more information to tell me different questions that need to be answered. The second thing is I would like to be able to take things that I've made and have it show up where people would like to get it in a way that's sensible. The problem is if I focus completely on the morass of various ways of trying to please everybody and hook all these things together and right now people, I feel like, at least I'll speak for myself. I feel like I'm not writing. I'm always writing for myself, QED, but I'm also not when I end up posting something in 2 or 3 places because nobody sees it anywhere. That's cutting into a value for me because it doesn't all belong in the same place, right? That's why I have at least this idea of there's blog posts. There's things I just want to write that might as well be a blog post instead of being not seen on Ivory or on Blue Sky. But then there's stuff that's just if you want to just see these remaindered link things, that might interest people. And maybe there could be tags. But so the second part is having made things that I like, how do I get that into places where people would like to find it? And they can even decide what level of engagement with my bullshit they're interested in. They don't necessarily want it all. And I can promise you they don't like all the music stuff. But then I think intelligently, I hope, I got to keep coming back to that first part, which is there is not a silver bullet, especially on a phone, for doing all the things I want to do. And you can all feel free to have a conversation about that. Well, why don't you just use drafts for everything? Okay, how do I put the image in drafts and preview it, make sure it looks good? Well, let's use Marsedit. Well, Marsedit doesn't work for everything. But that's great on a Mac. It does all those things that I want. It's fantastic for all those things. But then how does that cover? I don't want to have to tend to 6 different apps just to say some shit about Beethoven. It's too much overhead. Do you know what I mean? And I need to like using the app to put it in because look at my fucking Ghost site. It just sits there because I have to go and enter into this prayerful relationship with the website, which is very fun to use on a Mac, but Jesus fucking Christ, it's no fun to do on an iPhone, which is where I'm going to be posting. So I need to think about, I don't want to overthink this, and hopefully I'm going to get some help from a couple friends with helping me think through what it is that I want. But it's sort of when you get a new app, you get a new task manager, you get a calendar, you get a new whatever, you dick around in it, you try all the things. Time was before syncing, you'd have to move all your information into there and hope you didn't lose anything and all that kind of stuff. I have this sense of trust that if I'm very clear about part B, which is where can I look forward to some people who are interested finding these things, I also need to very much tend to part A, which is, do I like the apps and services that get stuff into other stuff? And I'm trying to keep a very open mind about both and all of those things. Because just putting up a website and hoping somebody finds it is not satisfying to me. I want to know that the people who want to see it can see it and the stuff they don't want to see. And if they just want to follow me socially and mute me, that's fine too. But I want to have some way to not just be posting to this app, or in the sense of there's a phrase you might, if you, I don't know how much of the Hitler series you watched, but my favorite episode, favorite episode is probably I mentioned this last night on Blue Sky. Probably didn't see it, but I said something about, given how things are going right now, it's the 4th episode that I think is really appropriate, which is once the fella got into power, what did he choose to do? And it's actually a difficult episode to watch for me this week because it's so similar. But there's a phrase you hear at least twice in that episode that I'd never heard before, and I think is a good phrase, which is the head guy lays out this kind of an agenda. He makes it very clear that, you're going, whatever it is that he wants, you're going to do it, but you get a pretty good idea what the head guy wants. The phrase they use is you're constantly working toward Hitler. Did you hear that phrase?
Yeah, in multiple places. It fucks
He
me
likes
up.
it. He likes it. He likes it when he has a bunch of people under him who have an incentive to come up with the idea that he's going to like the most, and he wants them to feel competitive with one another. And once you get to like the 202 level of this stuff, you realize, and this is why that movie Conspiracy is so interesting to me. It's like why these documentaries are so interesting to me. This was not a monolith by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, not just the German people, but you could just look at 5 people in that administration, and they're wildly different priors and goals and incentives, their motivations for each one of those. They're so different. And in that movie Conspiracy that I've now watched twice this week, it really comes together at the Wannsee Conference. It's not like and I know it's dramatized, but it's not like everybody there's to tick one box, will Hitler like me? Everybody's got a different incentive for the way that they want to run this, right? Which feels kind of oddly familiar, I'm very sorry to say. But the whole idea is the culture is telling you to work toward Hitler. And what does that mean? That means that whatever it is you're doing, whatever you're charged with, however you spend your day, you need to always be finding ways to have what you're doing reflect something that the head guy's going to like. You need to have your projects work toward him rather than feeling like you're executing on some kind of a light gray memo. Did you get that from that episode?
Yeah. In fact, I started watching a less it's not a well-made documentary series. Everyone's limited, whatever. But
yeah.
Hitler's Circle of Evil, I think it's called. It's also on Netflix.
I think it's the same or similar people.
Yeah. Well, yeah. They
emo Hitler shows up a lot, and that same actor shows up.
Yes.
I have a whole thing about this that's at the bottom of my document because I don't want to derail the episode with this. But as somebody who watches a shocking amount of stuff on YouTube, there's bits of footage you'll see reused
over and over again.
Well, even the pundits, there's the handsome pundit guy. There's Sir Richard, what's his name? The old white-haired guy. You see these same guys. That guy with the slight walleye, who's the most amazing German commentator in this series. You know, that one guy who always is, he's very calm.
Is that the
guy
one
with the
glasses? Yeah, I love that guy.
And he's the one who's like dropping the truth bombs in the driest way.
He's the one who's like, see how it's like Ismar Lago, which I would roll my eyes at if anyone else said. And I was like, I know.
But would you agree that Blondie was a good girl?
Oh, I loved Blondie. But Circle of Evil is specifically focusing on his and just how they all, completely unhinged in different ways, like you mentioned. But it was just, it was kind of, though, like first on the agenda was tick the Hitler box, but also figure out what box Hitler wanted at that moment. Like, how do we get to Daddy Adolf first? Because he didn't have any actual agenda other than control and hating the Jews.
I love the way they describe how like disorganized and lazy he is. And
I love the laziness. That is something I didn't even know from reading the Shearer biography, which is amazing. I read the shorter version of a million years ago.
Is it the Rise and Fall of Hitler?
No, it is
stuff. We should probably talk about the challenge.
Yeah. That was kind of it's not the Rise and Fall of the Third Reich.
I know. I read that in the 90s, but you see it in the corner. And part of what I want to do in pitching this show to people, because as somebody who might be regarded by some people as like, I don't want to say a Hitler enthusiast, but as somebody who's very interested in what 20th century conflicts, what we have to learn or should know from 20th century
I would happily call myself a Hitler enthusiast.
Yeah, see, that's one of your problems.
I know, one of many. But many people are saying this.
But that, anyway, whatever. Sorry. But I want to pitch this to people once we're into the proper challenge after I've rung the bell. Is that there's a couple through lines to this that I think are very well, to my mind, and very well done, and make this a good series to watch if you don't want to have to follow your nose for 6 months to just sift through the entire slop of YouTube to find the occasional insightful thing that isn't just made of archives and Getty Images samples. Because boy, I'm getting good at smelling those a mile off.
Oh yeah, you can tell it's not quite like a stock footage educational YouTube situation, but
No, this one's very, as these things go, this is, I think personally, this is really well done.
Oh, I agree. Just,
I mean, if you're interested in this kind of thing, I'm just telling you that, like, however you feel about the landscape of Hitler shit, I can tell you that I'm ready to be corrected on this, I suppose. But like, I've watched a fair amount of fiction and nonfiction about this period in history. And I'm not an expert. I'm so not an expert. I'm not learned at all. I haven't had classes or anything. But you do pick up a lot, and you start to recognize when this has something new to say. And if it opens, if you turn on your YouTube and it opens with a funny credit about the channel, and then any drone shot, turn it off. Unless. I mean, not always, but like if it's drone shot of like a mountain range, is that the best first shot you had? Like you're already telling me, you've warned me, you've told on yourself that you're the sort of person who's going to slap together videos out of stock footage. Wendover.
Yeah.
Break my heart.
He really broke your heart.
He broke my heart. He uses really high quality stock footage though. The videos that Wendover finds of planes moving slowly on landing strips is top notch. 4K easily, maybe 9K.
I don't know if this is okay. It's a bit 9K. All right. Well, I just he did not break my heart. I wasn't as much as
I'm exaggerating.
I know, but unfortunately not enough. As Trump recently said, I'm exaggerating for laughs, but not as much.
How are you doing? You good?
I am, yes.
Oh, also, I wrote down here that I'm thinking of calling my new web project HyperTab, just so I have a way to compete with Syracuse in terms of namespace pollution.
Oh.
His new app is Hyperspace, so I thought I'd go with HyperTab.
That's going to be a fun little fight. I like it. Or sorry, namespace pollution.
It's going to be tough because, he's the one I'm primarily relying on to keep me sane about this project. But so is this officially the challenge?
The challenge was officially to watch the first episode of Circle of Evil, the trial of Hitler.
Trial.
Yes, trial of Hitler and the Nazis.
Find it. It'll be in show notes. I'll probably do my new thing now. I think might be doing very abbreviated show notes that I try to do while we're on break.
I have watched and listened to so much, not World War II content, like specifically Hitler adjacent.
Oh boy,
content.
if you're ever looking for good stuff, I can totally point you in the right direction.
Here, you've already kind of mentioned the problem, though. A lot of I almost turned on my video. Goodness gracious. A lot of the YouTube stuff. Now that I've kind of gone to the source of Ian Kershaw and
that book sounds great. They talk about that constantly on the the biography of Hitler, which I don't know anything about except they mention it so often on The Rest is History, which is a good endorsement as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it is like the.
Is it recent or how old? How old?
Oh, I believe it was in the 90s. The abridged version, which I've read, which is still about a cup like the size of the Power Broker, is. So yeah,
I felt very impressive when I was reading the what's the opposite of a trade paperback? Reading the cheap paperback version of the Scherer book. I felt very impressive carrying a book that thick around.
Oh yeah, a mass market paperback. I was
thank you.
Yeah. I found out what that was recently, and I was in one of those bougie bookstores trying to find a very obscure science fiction Christmas
I miss those
book.
paperbacks. They used to be everywhere.
Yes, and I think if someone's like, "What the fuck is that?" The way I was, the sales clerk. What the hell, sales clerk?
The sales clerk.
The sales clerk.
Are you talking about the new shop girl?
She's
got a good look and clean fingernails.
This is what you might know as an airport book. And I was like,
skirt's a little bit brief for my liking.
Oh, yeah.
Unlike this book. I
I'm the AI voice of.
Was it Robert? Robert Shearer? What's his name? Was it Shearer?
Wait, I think it's Robert Shearer.
I'm the AI voice of Robert Shearer, and they can make me say anything they want. I'm a stupid moron with an ugly face and a big butt. My butt smells, and I like to kiss my own butt. I'm Robert Shearer, reporting to you live. I'm very frustrated about how they've treated my wife.
Now, here's the through lines, and I was trying. It's fun and funny because I'm happy to say somebody responded to my remark about how we're doing this challenge and how I recommend episode 4 for good context for why this week feels so. A term I invented yesterday, dumb 1935. As we live through dumb 1935.
Yes.
I've also realized you can put dumb in front of almost anything that's happening, and it really works.
I mean, same with in my pants. So that's not exactly a.
Or prescription.
I'm sorry. Continue. Yeah.
Okay. So the in my pants 1935.
Yeah.
Is that, do you say it before or after? You usually say it. You say 1935 in my pants. Is that what you would say?
Well, I mean, if you want, but
in my pants 1935.
like this one needs a comment. Like in my pants 1935. I mean, 1935 was peak.
You're missing my really good Yoda impression. Anyways, or Grover, or Bert. But so somebody very kindly responded and said, "Oh, that's so interesting because right now I'm reading Shearer's." I think he didn't know the through line. He said, "Oh, that sounds interesting because I'm reading The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich right now," and I was like, "Well, in that case, let me pitch you on this show." Because there's 2 through lines to the show that doesn't make it unique, but I think gives it a mooring that makes this different from just another like, oh, here's a bunch of information about the 30s. So the main, you tell me what you think about this, please. I think the main hook for this, in some ways, at first, is hey, even the opening shot, right, is the Nuremberg trial, and they're saying in 1946 there was this trial, and maybe one of the behind the scenes hooks is they've got this audio that they can then, make video around. But the point is, hey, this is, everybody knows bad stuff happened, right? 33 to 45, not great. Well, that was addressed at this Nuremberg trial. And the Nuremberg trial, as you'll see, is a thread throughout this. It's a framing device in some ways for saying, okay, we're going to talk about what happened with the Nuremberg, namespace pollution, the Nuremberg laws of 1935. Well, let's look at what that means then also in terms of like how that was prosecuted in 1946. We get our next hook, which is my favorite hook, title, which is, and guess what? There was this guy, played here by this actor, who was at the Nuremberg trial. Please tell me his real, I know his last name's Shire, because my mnemonic it starts with Shy.
Okay, they say it differently in the documentary because I wanted to get it right. And Shearer and Shire are referenced or are talked about differently on
William L.
The rest is
Shire.
history. Yeah.
William L. Shire. And so guess what? Here's the thing. 1946 Nuremberg, we got all these fat men in sunglasses on trial. What is going on here? Well, guess what? Slowly push in on this guy sitting there taking notes. And that's a guy named William Shire. Well, guess what? That's one of the, if you like, for this series anyway, not for his writing because he wrote a lot, but for this series, that's the right side bookend. The left side bookend is that Shire was there in Munich, I think, right? It was initially in Munich and then Berlin. But the point is, he was an American correspondent in Germany while this was happening. Could he report everything that he saw? Absolutely, he could not. But he kept a crazy detailed diary that's very well written. And I think then gave him so much context. It's his Mike McClintock, calendar book that's going to help him remember everything that happened and when it happened, right? So
yeah,
it's not, what I'm trying to say is like, I know I suggest a lot of like undifferentiated Hitlership, but I think this is good. I think it's well made. And I think those 2 through lines, those 2 hooks make this very, if you like, watchable and easy to follow. And to understand, again, having those bookends of Shire near the beginning and at the end. And then and admittedly, they did use, I would say, it seems to me, a very good computer to recreate his voice from his writing. And so he sort of not narrates, but you can hear parts of it. If it's him speaking on CBS radio and they've got the clip, they play that. But Well, let me ask you that off the dome. First of all, do you get what I'm trying to say? Does that make sense? Those two through lines, those two hooks.
Yes, but I think that it actually is unique in terms of your definition of there's literally nothing like that out there, because it has the framing device of the Nuremberg trials, which is what initially put me off when I just saw in the Netflix like carousel or whatever, because I'm like, I don't want to just hear, I know all of the, or not know, but I just don't want to see more footage of, I know what happened, but they don't.
Well, it's not dissimilar. I mean, there's been more than one occasion where I know just enough to know that, okay, that B-roll you're showing me is from a very different year than what you guys are talking about right now. You're showing us something from, I would peg as 1938, while you're talking about 1934, which may not seem like a big deal to us, but a lot happened in those 4 years, and those signs and those banners being up elides one of the most critical parts of this, and the part that makes this week so difficult for a lot of us is it started out real differently than how it ended up. Yes. And it was a fairly slow accretion of bad shit.
And that is another thing that makes this show unique. The lower thirds and references are phenomenal. Like, I know that people know who that guy is.
And the comic book rectangle that tells you what book this is from, that Scherer is speaking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they don't just have a bunch of different World War II and Hitler scholars that you've seen many times, but they also have William Shire's daughter, who's kind of like his conduit, because I believe he passed away. But also, I think, I'd never seen him before. Oh, yes, sorry, granddaughter, and his biographer, he's like he's talking about, like, he's the expert on his diaries and like going through the nightmare years, like the lesser known work he's done.
And the time when was depicted very well in that usual documentary slow motion stuff where, like, no, you can't say this, you can't say that, you can't say that. All you can do is basically read from this A5 sheet of paper. That's exactly what we said you can say.
With the one, not exception, but the first time that someone had broadcast from Germany to the U.S., he traveled to, I believe he traveled from Munich to the rally at Nuremberg to talk to his CBS
You're talking about Shirer or somebody else.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like they almost should have been like, as witnessed by Shirer. I don't know how they could have branded this better, because I know that Netflix has a certain kind of audience that likes when evil is in the title. But the way that they have remastered the audio is so good.
It works for the purpose of the series.
Yes. And they do make it very clear. I was never confused when something was a reenactment or the
audio is like, if that's real or whatever they did to that, to hear, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting that amazing Supreme Court guy who was our head prosecutor, like to be able to hear his voice and then how Goering responds is, it's kind of gives you shivers a little bit.
Oh, it's fucking chilling. And I mean, it was just that I didn't find a ton about this documentary, but it just seems like, well, no one had ever edited that footage together, because at the time, it's not like you could, syncing audio and video.
Well, they had a certain amount of video, and at least according, and two things to get out of the way. I have not done anything to vet if William Shirer should be canceled. I don't know anything about him. I don't know if he's considered a ding-a-ling by historians. That sounds like a valuable thing for people to pursue on their own. I have not done that, and I also I think we've probably said, I hope we will say, except in the pitching of this, that it doesn't get in the way, and it doesn't feel stupid and fake when they do stuff like create footage with actors that then plays alongside the original, what purports to be the original audio. I didn't find it distracting, and I hope anyway that it wasn't dishonest, but I don't have any, I'm not a historian. I can't vet that.
I did try to sort of just be like, hey, what I'm watching here feels less hyperbolic. And by hyperbolic, I don't mean they're like watering down any atrocities, but some of even the videos on your Hitler Pill playlist just inflate certain things that don't.
Oh, the music and all of that. Yeah, I know there's a word I'm searching for because I know what you mean. It's not that it's overly
Yeah, it's not
dramatic. It's that
hyperbolic, but
it's
it's
not
just-
hysterical, but it is a lot of this stuff is definitely, it's meant to feel like, oh, you're watching the most chilling thing you've ever seen in your life. And we've got to
Yeah.
constantly up that ante. I would just point
It's like,
out.
did
that-
you know he was on morphine? It's like, okay,
dun,
yeah,
dun.
whoa, yeah, all
But,
right.
like, if you've ever watched the most horrible thing ever put on film, which is the Allies movies of the different camps, there's no music in that. It doesn't need music. Just seeing a bunch of Polish people walk out of a room, a charnel room full of bodies with a handkerchief over their nose tells you what you needed to know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sort of how right. There it's not telling you how to feel. Like it's God.
Right.
There I think it was the one, it's a series of like Hitler's secret there's like Hitler's secret drug use, Hitler's secret sex life, Hitler's.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, first of all, none of this was a secret.
The
because,
obsession, like all this stuff that like makes a good YouTube thumbnail, like Himmler's obsession with the occult, like all these different things that are like meant to be very provocative, and like, but the story of Europe in the 30s, I mean, there's very few things that are more dramatic. Well, and then if you start going into the 40s, really like, and then include the very stupid invasion of the Soviet Union, like we haven't even gotten to the Pacific. That is a lot of very interesting shit that happened in 6 years in the case of the war, But
I'm going to sidebar, going to recommend another weird Hitler book, which is Eric Kurlander's Hitler's Monsters. If you're really into the just wild occult stuff, and it doesn't just make it really melodramatic, but it integrates how suddenly the weird satanic rituals and like how they were able to use that as propaganda, and how it wedged out Christianity.
you say it's called Hitler's Monsters?
Hitler's Monsters, yeah. And it's about here it is, a supernatural history of the Third Reich. So it's not like, I mean, yeah, it's got that title, but it is about, like, yeah, when they say it was satanic, there were some of Hitler's goons were like, oh yeah, we want to kill the Jews because they're satanic. Not like it's, and there was this, I have not gotten to the part about the Holy Grail, Himmler's search for the Holy Grail. And
That's just one. That's just one
wild
thing.
Yeah, that's just like one of the
Well, it's funny because the actual episode of The Rest is History, I forget which one it is because I listen to a lot, but one I was listening to this morning is one of the Hitler episodes, and they get into the need. So talking about everything's not everything. It's really hard to talk about one thing with these folks without talking about a lot of things, but I'll try to isolate it to this. A big part of what Hitler wanted to do, and certainly what Himmler wanted to do, was, I mean, I'm going to push back a little bit on the whole, like, Jewish people are satanic thing. I think it's worse than that. If I understand correctly, what they're saying is, I think this is an actual quote from the big guy. If a rat runs into your room, do you feel bad for killing it? Like, it's not because you hate the rat. It's just because you cannot have a rat in your house. And
Yes.
on top of it, what if that rat had caused you to lose the Great War?
Yeah, sorry, I was referring specifically to
the
Himmler, and
Himmler
that was
stuff,
like
yeah.
his checkbox he wanted to check to get closer to Hitler. But part of Hitler's thing was making everything.
That's what I was
Just
going to
so it's
say,
like-
is that he needs a way
Yeah.
to show, if he's going to say all this bananas stuff about how the superiority, he starts out with the superiority of German people, and then that kind of widens. I don't know the exact history of this, the exact order, but it isn't very long before, in order to show the Germans and German-ish people, which eventually he includes the Greeks and the Romans in, Like to do that, he needs to find more than some broken pots from the Dark Ages. Like if you, I'm just quoting Tom and Dominic here, but Dominic, but like, hey, the Greeks made the Acropolis. A piece of busted ass Tupperware is not a big deal. Like, how are we the master race if 1,000 years later we didn't have? So there's more and more reason to dig up things that they can then bolt on to this longstanding, I would call mythology, but they want to make into what appears to be a legitimate history that says step by step, century by century, here's the proof that the Germans are the best. And it's also proof, again, from a quote, as Dominic would say, inverted quotes, science that proves that the strong must win and that we are not benefiting society by protecting the weak, which I think in retrospect is an idea that we should now pay a lot of attention to. It's not even just like who's allowed to be here, who's allowed to be a doctor, who's allowed to be a teacher. It's that there's this turn from the long-standing anti-Semitism of the pre-19th century, then into the end of the 19th century, it becomes much more focused on race rather than religion. And that ends up having a huge impact on a lot of things. And all these pieces these guys hustled. They worked really hard to make all this bullshit make sense.
Except Hitler. Everyone except
he just slept in.
He just...
Did you know he let Blondie sleep in his bed?
Yes.
Isn't that sweet?
Then
he killed Blondie. He killed Blondie.
No, I know.
Well,
And I believe you are on record as the worst thing that Hitler did was killing Blondie.
Show me the lie.
Oh.
Show me dying a lie.
How about...
What did he say? In German. He said he didn't like it. He had to go along with it.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm quoting Peter O'Hanrahan.
See, I actually wait. Is that the Mr. Show? I should have. I know that's the Pennies
you don't need to
Up
know
the
it.
Ass
It's The Day Today with Chris Morris from circa 1995.
Okay, so
You've
it's
seen the
not...
Peter O'Hanrahan stuff,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Is he even there? No.
What did you say? Did you speak to him at all? No. Do you know what he said? I don't know. My favorite part is the way Peter, who's a great actor. I mean, like if you watch the first episode of The Day Today, which is fucking great. It's in the pilot and it's in the official first episode of The Day Today. It's a cutaway segment to going to the United States, to go to Tennessee to meet a guy who's about to be executed for a series of grisly murders. And as somebody who's from Tennessee, he's decided he wants to die like Elvis. So he's going to die on an electric toilet. But after eating like enough like hamburgers to give him health problems, he'll be killed on an electric toilet. And that's played by, I forget the actor's name, but that's played by the same guy that does Peter O'Hanrahan.
Oh, God, I love it. Oh, man.
Yeah, the British, man. It's a good series, though. It's a good series, and, I mean, it's not, I don't know. I had to have a moment of reflection the other day. I did a screen grab of this and put it on the internet, but looking at my Tracked viewing, looking at my Letterboxd reviews, I was like, oh, man, I'm having a regular, like, feel-good movie marathon over here. And I realized how much of this stuff, and I think I'm doing an Alex. I think whether I'd like to admit it or not, there's a lot of, I don't know if it's necessarily avoidant behavior, because sometimes it's a kind of avoidant behavior that gives unintentional context to what you're avoiding. And sometimes, not only is Schindler's List one of my favorite movies, it's a real good movie to rewatch sometimes. You know, when he puts that pin on.
I haven't seen Schindler's List in 2 decades.
You know, it's not a fun thing to say, but it is an extraordinarily photographed movie. It just everything about it. I think Greg Toland would approve of this movie. The way everything is framed and photographed is just. And I often forget that's Liam Neeson.
Yes, Yes.
I mean, I'm not stupid. I'm not deranged. But I mean, I don't think
you're
of him
not me.
I don't think of him as the guy from Taken in the third act of this, when he's realized he's saying I could have done more. I could have done more. He has a very specific set of skills.
Oh God! Oh,
Involves enamel pots.
I thought in my
Polishing
head,
the shells with their tiny hands.
That shouldn't get a bell.
What a great cast! What a great goddamn cast! And the way you follow families like throughout the movie, you should watch it again. It's good. The other movie I'm going to recommend to you, because I've already said it like 6 times, and I think it's a really fucking good movie. I can't believe I had not seen. It's an HBO movie from 2001 called Conspiracy. I forget who directs it. And so a name you've probably heard cropping up quite a lot is Heydrich, the guy who was,
Yes.
I mean, a lot of people I'd always heard, the SS, Himmler, that's what happened. That's why we had the Final Solution, which, absolutely is true in a lot of ways. But nobody was more of the model SS guy. Nobody was more bloodthirsty and organized and fucking smart and talented than Heydrich. And he's the one who you might have heard of the Wannsee Conference. If you've ever heard the phrase final solution to the Jewish question, that's a phrase that I think became famous because of the Wannsee Conference, which, contrary to the movie and contrary to a lot of what people believe, it was not where everybody goes, oh my gosh, we have a Jewish storage problem. Well, everybody knew they had a Jewish storage problem. That was something that the point of the movie is that all of these people have a stake in what do we do with all of these people. But, and again, planning, they thought they were going to win in Russia, or in the Soviet Union, even though they were getting their asses handed to them. They were thinking forward to there's 12 million people we want to get rid of at least. What do we do with all these people? And this is why I say that movie Conspiracy is so good. There's a contingent from the East, including party people, SS people. One of the guys who participated in the Einsatzgruppen 2-day event that killed 30,000 people with bullets and dropped them into a trench. That guy was there. Now, was he there to say that we need Zyklon B? No, he was saying, look, you get out there and do that and see how your day goes. My guys are suffering because this is really, really hard work. And get this. This is why, remember last week when I said, let's not just put Nazi sauce on everything? These are, in some cases, it's the SS that's doing a lot of that stuff, but in coordination, in a lot of cases, with the Wehrmacht. The Wehrmacht might have been idealist person to person, but more than anything, they were the German army. They were soldiers.
Right.
They defend children.
SA goons. What's the Wehrmacht?
Wehrmacht is the I think it means war makers or Wehrmacht.
No, I know, but how are they different?
Oh, it's the German. So when I say Wehrmacht, I might be saying it wrong, and I might be meaning it wrong. But think of that. I mean, it's the establishment military arm of the German country and people. And again,
the only reason I'm annoying about that is because SS
does it include the Kriegsmarine? I would say yes.
And the difference between the SA and. Actually,
that might be ex-soldiers. No. That's totally different head. Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. A lot of people confuse the brown shirts.
Yeah, because it's uniforms.
Everybody's
got uniforms. Yeah.
Yeah, and we put so much Nazi sauce on them. I'm like,
I'm not saying you need to know this, but I am trying to say in the way that I'm not even a teacher. I'm not even hardly a TA. What I am saying is that just be aware that those terms don't all mean the same thing. And if you do care, it's way more confusing than it first looks. Because the SS, Himmler is basically in charge of. Himmler and later, to a great extent, Heydrich, are in charge of security for the entire Reich. But the SA, the SA at this point was gone, but mostly, at least, Rome and his buddies were gone. But you've got the Gestapo.
Pretty early, too.
But you've got the SS Gestapo. You've got the SS Totenkopfs. You've got, I think that's what it's called, but the Death Head, the really bad guys who are out there with the Einsatzgruppen. But, this all just sounds like word salad, but not only is it meaningful, the reason I want to suggest that you watch this movie Conspiracy, whether or not it's 100% accurate, it will give you it will help situate the idea that these are very different people with very different motivations. Does everybody want to please Hitler? Fuck yeah. But one guy's worried because he wants his Jewish people taken out of Poland before they take the Jewish people out of Germany, because he can't the ghettos are out of control. They're full of disease. Now, somebody like this one guy who's from the party in Berlin is like boo-hoo, and he's like, hey, well, you come work here, you get typhus and see how you feel about it. And he's like, build a taller wall. That guy is all about pleasing Martin Bormann, known as the Brown Eminence, right? That's one thing. He's got to please Martin Bormann. Bormann is this guy who kind of come. Then you got this guy over here, who's head of the 4-year plan, director of the 4-year plan. He answers to Goering. The 4-year plan is a whole different idea that gets torn up and thrown in the air after the Wannsee Conference. You got the guy over here, played by Colin Firth, who wrote the Nuremberg Laws because at first you think, oh my gosh, is he actually a nice guy and he wants to save these people? He is not. He's just saying that the world will not, if we kill these people extrajudicially, the world will judge us. We don't need to apologize for this because we're basically squashing a rat under our heel, and we oughtn't act like these people are some kind of like folk demon. They're clever, smart people who need to be eradicated. Well, that might surprise a lot of people. Like, that's not the obvious story of this. You've got the other guys over here who are in the SS who are like, hey, like, why are we here? Why are we just not here like killing everybody? You got other people over here saying the way we hold this coalition together is through the legality of what we're doing, and we're going to lose support among a lot of people if they feel like we're doing this extrajudicially. At one point in the meeting, Heydrich, played by Kenneth Branagh, says, everybody here is a lawyer, raise your hand. And almost every person at the table raises their hand.
Wait, when's that?
Oh, geez, you're going to make me look this up. 42? W-A-N-N-S-E-E.
I hate how much I know about this. I'm basically like, oh God, I know Nazi leadership like Pokemon at this point. Good Lord.
Wannsee Conference is January 20th, 1942.
The thing I keep coming back with, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of answers to this, is how much of it was intentionally confusing to the Allies, because the German people...
They certainly did want to cover their tracks on a lot of stuff. Partly the Wannsee Conference, one copy of the Wannsee Conference notes got out by mistake, but they were all supposed to have been destroyed. Like the way Himmler, Himmler's such a piece of shit. The way he chickened out and like had all these people death march away or like cover the bodies because he thought at least we can minimize the obviousness of what we did. But the critical part for Wannsee and after is, no, this needs to be secret so we can get this done. Like this is part of our strategy and it wasn't like, tee hee hee, look at what we're getting away with. It's more like for the scale of this to work.
Way more evil and terrifying to me.
It's certainly wicked, but putting all of these people on eastbound trains, guess what? One of the guys is like, hey, look, if you use all that rolling stock to take Jews to Poland, like that's so much stuff less ability we have to take supplies to Russia or whatever. And Heydrich kind of ties it all together early in this case in the movie. He goes, look, there's all this buzz before the meeting. Everyone's talking about how things are going so badly in the Soviet Union, and there's differing amounts of correct information about what's actually happening. But he lays it right out, which is, hey, look, we need to win this war. And to win this war, we're going to need to do something about this big question. And people come in with their ideas and their reports and hand them along. And Kenneth Branagh is so fucking good in this. At just being like, yeah, you'll all be heard, but I'm mainly just here to make sure you guys understand what you're going to be doing, because you guys all need to be working together on this. There is a plan, and a lot of you are not going to like it. Not because you're a great Semitophile, but because it's going to generate a fuck ton of work for you. At one point, one of the guys is like, okay, so you're going to, they're talking about the part that's one of the most, in some ways, low-key harrowing parts, which is figuring out what a Jew is, who a Jew is. This has been accomplished to some extent with the Nuremberg Laws. One of the reasons Colin Firth is so mad.
Documents that leaked, I hadn't seen that, of like the equations they were doing of the family trees of like, okay, so which are, because
right. Do you just get sterilized? Because some people were like, look, Colin Firth was like, just sterilize them. It stops but then Kenneth Branagh says, well, the most effective kind of sterilization is, the code word was evacuation. That was the
Yeah.
most effective thing we can do is evacuate them.
Yeah,
But
and then
everybody
they're
had
fighting
their
is like,
own
wait,
reasons.
is it
Yeah.
is it just eugenics, or is it also religion and like all of the infighting around that? And it's just too familiar for comfort. Yikes!
Yeah.
But I'm very frightened by Stephen Miller.
That's so funny you should say that. Because I don't want to make this silly and make you take it less seriously, but he's really somebody to think about. And it
I
kind of
do
fits into,
too much.
here's another analog. Did you ever see the movie 12 Angry Men? It's a really good movie.
I've seen a couple of play versions.
12 Angry
but
Men
not
is
the
about a
movie.
jury of literally 12 men who have to decide whether somebody's guilty of murder. Spoiler alert, Henry Fonda is the good guy that makes everybody realize. But that what makes that movie fascinating, like if they make you watch it in 8th grade, you might as well be watching Romeo and Juliet. It won't make a ton of sense. When you watch it when you're a little bit older, you appreciate 12 Angry Men because, at least for me, from my POV, everybody's got their reasons. Every single person has their reason, whether you like it or not. But denying that people do have their reasons is really fucking stupid in life. You may not know their reasons. You may not like their reasons. Refusing to acknowledge that they have their reasons is not a good strategy for anybody. But then this gets complicated because everybody has perhaps allied, sometimes overlapping, but often very different reasons. It killed Ernst Röhm. Like he had his reasons. But right? Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's, to me, that's the beauty of that conspiracy movie that I've watched twice this week. It's also got a touch of the Tooch. Stanley Tucci's Eichmann. So
Oh, sorry. I thought I misheard that as the Mooch. Anthony
thought it was from Breaking Away?
Scaramucci. No. Beloved,
Yeah.
short as member of the Trump administration, Anthony Scaramucci, who
I don't think he was there.
because he's deeply unserious. I think it was
I
12
can tell
hours.
you're not being serious.
What?
He's
Anthony
a
Scaramucci?
media figure now. He's everywhere and he has
Yes.
his own show. He's like a big deal now.
He is. He hosts the show. No, I'm sorry, because he was.
co-hosts a show with some woman on
Yeah.
like a regular network, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of good.
Oh, good.
But he was the
Maybe he got off of
shortest-
whatever he was on at the time.
I
Maybe he moved on to Stalin pills.
okay, maybe
You're Stalin. It's kind of a pun.
I do like trains, so you know.
Wow.
What?
I do like trains,
I didn't say
says
that.
Millennial Pole. You ever dance on a Millennial Pole?
Oh, it's funny in a lot of offensive ways.
Yeah.